Rancher saves two Apache girls. Next day, their mother arrives with a strange reward. The wind carried the smell of dust and pine that morning, the kind of smell that clings to a man's coat and lingers long after he stepped off the trail. Silas Boone had been out checking his fences, the leather of his reins creaking in rhythm with the black gelding beneath him, when he caught sight of two small figures crouched beneath a mesquite tree. At first, he thought it was nothing more than shadows folded against a trunk, but then a faint movement, the tremble of a shoulder, told him different. He dismounted slow, boots pressing into the sand with a hush. The world felt too still, the air too thin, as though it waited for his next breath. Two girls sat there, their dresses ragged, faces streaked with dirt, eyes like frightened birds. Apache, he realized, and far too young to be alone. The elder, perhaps 10, glared at him with fire that did not match the hollowness of her cheeks. The younger, maybe 6, buried her face in her sister's shoulder, but peeked out with wide eyes that seemed already too accustomed to hunger. Silas removed his hat, holding it against his chest. "You're safe," he said quietly, though he doubted they knew his words. He stepped closer, slow as a man approaching a spooked colt. They did not run, only pressed tighter into the bark, as if the tree could swallow them whole. His heart twisted, remembering nights long ago when he crouched beside his mother's grave, certain no one would come. He bent low, speaking again, softer still. "Come on, little ones. Let's get you out of the sun." When they didn't flinch from his hand, he lifted them gently, one after the other, onto the saddle. Their bones felt sharp beneath his callous grip. The elder never broke her glare, even as her lips trembled. He mounted behind them, guiding the gelding toward his cabin. The ride was silent save for the faint rustle of their hair in the wind. He felt their small backs press against him, rigid with mistrust, but alive, and that was enough. By the time he reached his cabin, the sun had begun its steep fall, bleeding orange across the hills. He helped them down and opened the door, the smell of cedar smoke spilling out. They stood uncertain, eyes darting over the worn table, the stone hearth, the quilts folded neat along the bench. Silas poured water into a tin cup, set bread on a plate, and slid it across the table. The younger girl stared, not moving, while the older pushed the plate slightly back, suspicion carved deep in her face. But hunger betrayed them. After a long moment, the little one snatched the bread, nibbling fast, then slipping the rest into her pocket as though afraid it would vanish. Silas pretended not to see. The fire crackled between them, light painting the girls' faces in shifting gold. They did not speak, nor did he press them. It was enough to share a roof, to hear their breaths in the stillness. His loneliness pressed close, familiar as his own shadow, but for the first time in years it did not feel unbreakable. By morning, word had traveled down the valley and into Dry Creek. Silas walked into the general store for flour, and all conversation froze. Mrs. Kendall, the storekeep's wife, narrowed her eyes until they seemed like knife slits. "Boone," she said, voice sharp, "you keeping Injuns under your roof?" He set the flour on the counter, steady as stone. "I gave them food. Nothing more." A man spat into the dust by the doorway. "Ain't wise, Boone. Folks'll talk. Folks don't like when lines are crossed." Silas took his sack without answering. He could feel their stares burn into his back as he left. Outside, the air seemed heavier, filled with words unspoken, judgments sharp enough to cut. Yet when he returned to his cabin and saw the two girls sleeping curled together by the hearth, his shame cracked into something like defiance. Let the town whisper. These children were safe here. The next day, as the sun dropped low and shadows stretched long across the plain, he saw a lone rider approaching, a woman on a paint horse, her back straight, her braid laced with beads that caught the dying light. She dismounted with the grace of someone born in the saddle, eyes hard as river stone. The girls ran to her, voices rising in words he could not understand. Their mother. She looked at Silas, suspicion sharp as the knife at her belt. "My daughters," she said in rough but clear English. Silas tipped his hat, his voice low. "They're yours. I only gave them warmth when night would have taken them." The older girl clung to his sleeve before going, the younger pressing her face once more into his coat before running to her mother. Something passed in the woman's eyes, surprise, perhaps, or reluctant gratitude, but her face held firm. She reached into her saddlebag and drew out a bundle of herbs bound in cloth, along with small carved talismans shaped like a hawk. She laid them on his table. "This," she said, "for what you did." He frowned. "I need no payment." "Not payment," she answered, her voice steady. "Reward. For the wound you carry that no eye can see." Then she turned, gathering her daughters, and rode off into the falling dark. The cabin felt colder without the girls, though the fire still burned. Silas set the talisman on the mantel. It seemed to pulse faintly in the flicker of flame. He sat long into the night, the silence thick, until he heard hoofbeats again. The door creaked, and there she stood, alone. She did not cross the threshold, only lingered, the night pressing at her back. After a long silence, she stepped inside, setting her bow against the wall. She sat across from him, the firelight catching the scar on her hand. They did not speak at first. He poured coffee. She accepted. The quiet stretched, but it was not empty. Her name was Ahiana. He learned in fragments. Her words were few, broken between languages, but her eyes spoke enough. Loss etched into her face, resilience in the straightness of her shoulders. She touched the mantle where the talisman rested, as though assuring herself he had kept it. He noticed the lines at the corners of her eyes, the weariness that matched his own. The air between them shifted. Not romance declared, not even spoken, but a beginning of something fragile, something born of recognition. Two people carved by grief, sitting in the same silence, finding it less heavy together. But silence shattered when shouts rose outside. Lantern light cut across the yard, figures swaying with drink and anger. Town men, rifles in hand, their boots stirring dust. "Boone," one barked. "You gone and lost your senses? Harboring her kind? We won't have it." Silas stepped out onto the porch, the boards creaking under his weight. He faced them steady, his voice low but sharp. "You'll not lay a hand on her, nor on me." Laughter rippled, bitter and mean. One raised his rifle. But then, from the edge of the yard, two small figures appeared, Naya and Tala, eyes fierce, standing beside their mother. Their presence cut through the mob like cold water. Ahiana stepped forward, her chin high, her voice carrying strong and clear. "This man saved my daughters. I owe him more than your judgment." For a moment, no one moved. The firelight painted every face with sharp edges. Then mutters rose, the rifles lowered, and one by one the men turned away, their shadows stretching long into the dark as they left. The yard fell silent again. Silas exhaled slow, the tightness in his chest loosening. Ahiana looked at him, her eyes softer now, though no less strong. "Strange reward, maybe," she said, "but sometimes the gift is not gold, but a place where the heart is no longer alone." The dawn came pale and quiet, the world washed clean. Silas stood at the hearth, watching the talisman glow faintly in the new light. He thought of the girl's hands clutching his sleeve, of Ahiana's voice steady against the mob, of the silence they had shared that did not feel empty. He lifted his gaze toward the open door, the horizon waiting beyond. And in that stillness, the truth settled in him like the warmth of a long-forgotten fire. Kindness, once given, circles back, not always as riches, but as a hand that steadies your soul when you need it most. Remember that when the world tells you to turn away.